Gogeta and Vegito, for many years those two were considered to be the greatest and strongest Dragon Ball figures. However, as much similarity as both possess, there are still two completely different characters. So in this video we will talk about the 7 differences that separates them, where some difference might be obvious and others you may have overlooked. One of the most prominent and notable differences between Gogeta and Vegito is the most obvious one, their name. Thus, despite both characters being a fusion form of Vegeta and Goku, they still have different names. Gogeta being the obvious composite of the two letters of the name Goku, which is Go plus the remaining letters of Vegeta's name, which corresponds to the Japanese name Gogeta. However, Vegito is somewhat of a mess, because saying Vegito is somewhat technically incorrect. You see, the first error is Vegeta is the combination of Vegeta plus Kakarot. In the English dub, they mess that up and make Vegito say,
"What do you call a Vegeta and a Goku? Vegito sounds alright."
Where in the actual manga he refers to himself as Vegeta and Kakarot. Why Kakarot? Well, we will get to that soon. However, you should know that Vegeta's name is pronounced or actually written as Vegeta, and Kakarot as Kakaroto, hence the Japanese name Vegito, which the English dub made it to Vegito. So you are correct in saying Vegito, however, as long as you stay consistent by writing Vegeta's name with an I and pronounce Goku's Saiyan name as Kakaroto. Now you could also say Vegito, which is common by fans in some Dragon Ball Z video games. However, if you want to be as technical as possible, then your best bet is going with Vegarot, which is what Viz translation refers to him, so they can be as consistent as possible. But hey, tomato tomatoes, am I right? While both fusions grant you impeccable and uncanny strength, these fusions are performed very differently. Gogeta's fusion is performed by the fusion dance, a technique that Goku learned after his death in the Cell games by a group of people named the Metamorns. The fusion dance, as the name suggests, is a short series of poses that are performed by two characters of equal power levels and roughly equal size. To correctly perform the fusion dance, two people must strike the poses in a perfectly symmetrical image of one another. The result of a correctly performed fusion dance is a superior being whose power is multiplied several folds over that of the individual who fused together. If the dance is performed incorrectly, it will result in an obese or skinny character who is much weaker than the either fused individual. On the other hand, Vegito's fusion is performed by using the Supreme Kai's earrings, where any two people of any size or power may put these earrings on opposite ears, and the result is them immediately joining bodies together. Now, there is no official multiplier that explains how powerful the fusion participants becomes during their fused state. However, we know that Potara fusion is stronger because unlike the fusion dance, Potara fusion does not cut back on power level. Thus, one of the requirements of the fusion dance is both participants must have equal power levels. Therefore, one fighter would have to lower their power to match the other fighter. So hypothetically, if Gotenks were a result of Potara fusion, then Trunks would not need to lower his energy to match Goten's. Also, that's why we see Goku desperately wanting to fuse with either Dende or even Mr. Satan, because Goku would not need to lower his power level to fuse if he decided to use the Potara earrings, where if he decided to use the fusion dance, the result might be a weaker fighter. Now this is simple, the fusion dance normally holds up to only 30 minutes. However, this has proven to be lower depending on how strong the fighter is. Thus, Gotenks Super Saiyan 3 could only hold his Super Saiyan 3 fused form for only 5 minutes. And if you also want to count GT, then Gogeta SS4 was also unable to hold on his fused state. However, the Potara fusion does not have this handicap, and could not be broken by time alone unless there was magic involved, like when Vegito defused in Super Boo's body after being absorbed, and Capito Kai making a wish to break the fusion. One of the most obvious differences between the two is obviously how they look, but putting what they're wearing aside, I'm talking about their body structure and their face. If you look closely at Gogeta's face, you can spot that he is a 50-50 split of Vegeta and Goku. He's a perfect combination. In fact, unlike Vegito, Gogeta refers to himself as both Goku and Vegeta, where Vegito is more of Vegeta's personality. In case you didn't notice it, it's already in his name. And if that's not evident enough, just look at his clothes. They're more of Vegeta's style and color. He's very cocky and arrogant. And that goes back to what the Elder Kai suggested. The fusion takes on the most dominant personality. That's why when Elder Kai fused with the old lady, he remained more like himself. In fact, he remained a guy instead of a female. Also, when Supreme Kai fuses with his assistant, Kabuto Kai, it's kind of felt like Supreme Kai with a different hairstyle. This goes same with Vegito. Since Vegeta is the dominant personality, he gets more of Vegeta's personality. However, it's interesting to note that Vegito has more of Goku's physique, which suggests that Goku is physically more dominant and powerful than Vegeta. Now this might sound like a stretch, though if Goku and Bulma hypothetically fuse via Potara earrings, I wouldn't be surprised if it came out as Goku SSJ Blue with boobs maybe. Anyways. Now, similarly to what we just said, since the personalities are directly affected on what the method of fusion was used, if you listen closely to whenever Vegito speaks, you could hear more of Vegeta's dominance in the voice than Goku, where Gogeta sounds a little more to Goku than Vegeta. Also, it's interesting to note that Gogeta in a matter of seconds was able to end his fight against Janemba, where Vegito was being incredibly cocky. However, this could be most likely a time constraint since Gogeta was in a movie and perhaps destroying Janemba ASAP was very crucial. However, one can't deny that they have very different attitudes when fighting an opponent. Now here's the most obvious fact of the day. Gogeta is not canon, but Vegito is canon. In case some of you don't recognize what canon means, it basically means that Vegito is part of the actual series because he was part of the original manga, where Gogeta is a movie character, which means that Gogeta never actually happened in the actual timeline. Whether it's Gogeta or Vegito, I think they're both cool characters, so comment down below which one is your favorite, and please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. I worked very hard on this one, so please share. But above all, I'm your host Moody, and I'll see you next time.